Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Muslims in America, where we interview Muslim elected officials and influencers to find out how they got involved in their local communities and how they make a difference. In today's episode, you're going to meet two newly elected Muslim sisters in the state of New Jersey. They were involved in their local communities, then they decided to take it to the next level. They're first being elected for the first time in their local communities. Before we start, I want to remind you to make sure that you subscribe to my channel and make sure that you hit the like button and the reminder bell to be notified of future episodes. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. And I want to welcome our two sisters who just finished a very successful campaign in their respective cities. Sister Nadia Hussain, who ran for the Board of Education in Bloomingdale, New Jersey, and Sister Fozia Janjua, who ran for City Council in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Welcome, sisters.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let me give you a brief introduction to both of them. Nadia Hussain is a lifelong activist and advocate. She recently won her election to the Board of Education in Bloomingdale, New Jersey. And if I might say, she was the top vote getter. She is the first Bangladeshi American woman to be elected to a Board of Education office in New Jersey history. She is the co-founder and currently board member of the Bangladeshi American Women's Development Initiative. She also serves on the National Board of Directors of the American Civil Liberties Union. Fozia Janjua is a first-generation Pakistani American and resident of Mount Laurel, New Jersey. She is the first Muslim and first Pakistani to be elected to office in Burlington County, New Jersey. She is passionate about building strong communities through mentorship and service. She co-founded a nonprofit called Unity SJP. She is married and has 4 boys. Welcome again, sisters, and thank you for accepting our invitation. Congratulations on your victory.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be on the show.
It is.
The honor is all mine. I want to congratulate you again. I've seen both of you working very hard in your respective campaigns, and you're braving all the elements, and you both have families, you have children, but you still decided to run for office. If I might say, in New Jersey, I believe there were about 4 or 5 newly Muslim elected officials. I think the majority of them are women. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. That's true, yes.
Very good. So let's start with the question of how and why did you decide to enter the race for elected office? You pick.
Fozia, if it's all right, I just would love to defer to you because your race really broke a lot of ground in your town and your town.
I had actually no intention of running for office. This was not on my radar at all. I was at the governor's office mansion. We were invited for a holiday party last year, and I met a lady there, and we got to talking, and turns out she lived in Mount Laurel, and she was the co-chair of the Democratic Committee. And we kept in touch for a couple of months, and then she asked me to run as a committee woman. Well, she asked me to run for a councilwoman position. And I actually said no to her a couple of times before I said yes. And the reason I did that was because I like to work behind the scenes, and I'm not somebody who likes to put myself out there. If you actually look at my Facebook page prior to when I announced that I was running, it was very private. All the community service work that I did was very privately done behind the scenes. So putting myself out there was very difficult. But the only reason why I'm doing it is because I realize now more than ever, the importance of us as Muslims of putting ourselves out there and being a part of the narrative and being a part, having a seat at the table, like the mayor said. That's something that really resonated with me, is how if we don't have a seat at the table, then we're on the menu. So that's why I ran, to have a seat at the table, to have a voice and have a better future for my boys and the future generation of Muslims in America.
That's very good. And before we move on to Sister Nadia, if I may ask, obviously you said you were at the governor's office before you were even in elected office, so you were making a difference to the point that you were being invited.
It was at the mansion. Yeah, I have a local nonprofit that I started with 7 friends and I that started it 4 years ago. When Donald Trump was elected, we felt like our country was very divisive on so many levels. And in order to do something about it instead of sitting there and lamenting about the state of our country, we decided to take action and we started a nonprofit. And the goal of our nonprofit is to unite communities through service. And that's what we do. So we have various projects where we bring community members together, whether we're making meals to pass out to the homeless or making no-sew blankets to give to domestic violence shelters or hospitals or care packages. It's all about bringing people together to do something good.
And you bring up a very important point, a very good point. The fact that you were asked to run for office several times and you refused, but then you've accepted eventually. And that's a point I try to make all the time, is if you are of good value to the community, regardless of what your name is, you will be asked to take leadership positions because people want good representation.
Well, I really appreciate that Fozia shared that point. You know, I actually have a different perspective. I actually always had a goal of wanting to run for office. I wanted to see better leadership, better representation in leadership. And I know that for me, I moved around a lot because my father was in the U.S. military. So I was never in one community a long, long time. But what I saw was kind of a cross section of many different communities. And I just hope that one day I would be able to settle somewhere and really be able to give back to the local community I was part of. So when I moved to Bloomingdale 4 years ago, we finally bought a home. I finally was not moving around constantly. I really felt like, well, what can I do for my own community here in Bloomingdale? I got very involved locally. I was an activist before for many years, doing many different things. But in this community, I joined our Economic Development Commission. I joined a stigma-free mental health committee. I just got more and more involved, and my son is 5 years old now, so he just started the pre-K program in our public school here, and I became a PTA parent, a class parent. So I was just getting more and more involved. And now that my son was in our public education system, and I'm very passionate about public education. I've been in public education my whole life, and even in college, I went to Rutgers, which is a public university. And I just thought, well, let me at least go to these school board meetings to find out more about just what's happening. I'm an activist. I advocate to Congress for policies that help families, that help mothers, that promote healthcare. So I do this work in DC, I do this work in Trenton, but in my own backyard, I know that local decisions are very important. So going to these school board meetings, I just started just attending as a parent, really. And when I saw that there was an appointment position open, I put my name in. I put my own name in. I just thought it would be an opportunity to serve, to bring a voice of parents, especially parents of young children, into the community. I also did not see that many parents of color at all involved. Although I did see a lot of kids of color in the school. So I wanted to bring again a sense of kind of representation and diversity to our board. I actually didn't get it accepted in the appointment process. And that's when I looked into running. I knew that you submitted your petitions, and I kind of took it on myself I didn't get in by appointment, so let me see if I can get elected. And that's my journey to being on Board of Ed now.
So if obviously I've been in politics, so I understand the process, and maybe you weren't accepted because you weren't part of the club, but now you joined the club with the will of the people. And it's amazing that, the story is between the two of you. And last week's story, which is Mayor Farah Khan, who was councilwoman for 2 years, and she was able to take out a 28-year incumbent, and Fozia, who didn't want to run for office, and you being the top vote getter. And I know you attribute it off camera to being first on the ballot, but understand that there is the biases that there are against our names. I don't think it was strictly based on you being first on the ballot. How hard did you work? I know you. I know your level of energy. Can you talk about that campaign and how did you get to be the top vote getter?
I'm going to be very honest, and I will say I do not think women take enough credit when they do something. I think women of color don't take enough credit. So I will take credit that I worked very, very hard. I did earn my spot. in my town in the past, and especially when it came to board of education races, there wasn't a lot of campaigning. It's a small town. It's a small district. We have only about 8,000 residents. We have about 5,000 something voters, although that number might have gone up this cycle because of the increased interest in the presidential election. But I living here for about 4 years, I remember whenever I would vote, and I vote obviously in every election, I remember looking at the Board of Education and maybe one or two people I knew, and so I voted for them. But I just knew them by name. I didn't really know what they stood for or what policies they were supporting for Board of Education. And the others, I might as well have said eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I did not know one person from another. I literally would call a friend who's lived in Bloomingdale for a long time and say, hi, tell me who to vote for, who's a good person. And for me, I wasn't comfortable with that because I knew the different electeds, whether it was Congress or our council, but I didn't know our Board of Education. And 53% of our taxes go to Board of Education. I mean, it's a very important position. Even if you don't have children in the district, tax money is going into the district. So it's a very important position. And I knew that. And when I remember as a voter feeling that, wow, I'm not an educated voter. I'm Googling the folks on there. I have no idea if they have a policy I agree with, if their values align with mine. And so when I decided to run, I knew that, no, that's not going to be me. You're going to know my name and you're going to know what I stand for. And then you can, as a voter, decide if that is the value, if that is the person you would like to support. And thank goodness that over the years of working in advocacy and activism, I have built a very amazing network of people. Mohamed, you've been part of that, especially with our advocacy for Syrian families. But this was really when so many of my friends and colleagues really came in and supported me. My local community, like I said, I was involved with the PTA. I was involved with our Economic Development Commission. They supported me, but I really campaigned. I knocked on over 1,000 doors. Now with COVID, obviously I had to be careful. I wore a mask. I wore gloves. I socially distanced. I checked to see how folks felt. And actually people were very responsive to my door knocking. I knocked over, again, 1,000 doors. If it was non-COVID, I would have knocked on every single door twice. Okay, but I still hit 1,000 doors. With the fundraising efforts that I was able to pull together with the support of so many friends, I was able to have mailers mailed to every single voter in town, not once, but 3 times. I was able to have targeted Facebook ads for our community. I had a Facebook page. And another thing I did is, because it's COVID, I'm not going to be out there shaking hands, right? Or going to meet and greets and community events. I actually did a Facebook video launch with my 2 children, with my 5-year-old and my baby. It was about a 20-minute announcement of me running for office. I shared it on some of the local Facebook groups, and I got 5,000 views on that video after I started sharing it. And so I made sure to use digital. I did Zoom meet and greets, since I can't do in-person meet and greets, and there's no candidate forum in our town for Board of Education. And I did the in-person. So it was a combination of reaching people where they're at. And it really did pay off. Even when I door knocked, there were doors that had Trump signs. There were doors that had Black Lives Matter signs, that had my lawn signs next to their Black Lives Matter sign, that had my Smith and Nadia Hussain lawn sign next to their Trump sign. And I will say, even door knocking in this town, which is a deep purple town, it's not Democrat, it's not Republican, I got, I'd say 99% super positive feedback, because it's about people. And I think in my case, people won out over politics.
All right, so that's awesome. But here's the thing, you're both mothers, you have children, you have jobs, you have a lot of responsibilities. How do you balance all of that and still run now for office, win the office, and now you're going to be responsible to attend meetings, maybe groundbreakings, maybe ceremonies? How do you balance? Do you have a talk with your family about it?
So with me, I actually get my kids involved. With my nonprofit too, whenever we have events, I bring the boys with me, and they participate in whether we're making sandwiches or we're doing blankets, we're making care packages, they're there with me. And even with campaigning, we canvass too. So we socially distance, we put on door mailers, and we knocked on doors and talked to people. And I had my boys with me on the weekend. They would come out with me every Saturday, and we would do that together. So I think that's the key, is to make sure that my husband and my kids know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and if they can, have them be involved in what I'm doing. So that way it's not like I'm isolating from them and doing things on my own, but they're a part of what I'm doing. And even with running for office, this is something my husband and I talked about together before I said yes and went ahead with running. Was, we weighed the pros and cons of doing it, and we realized that it's something that's going to be positive for the whole family. I hope that with my boys, I'll inspire them to put themselves out there and run for office, and help the community and help the people in their town. So we felt like it was a positive thing all around, and that's why we went ahead and did it. And I know there will be sacrifices here and there, but we understand that, and we talked about it. So I think once you know everything that comes with it, and you have a strong unit and a strong family, and you discuss all that, then we can make it work. I mean, unfortunately, with women, we have a lot more on our plate because we're juggling a lot more. But if you have a good balance with your spouse and your kids, then it can work.
So great. Thank you very much. Now, Nadia, Zach and Emiliano are Facebook sensations. They're always with you, also on social media. How do they feel about you running for office and being now a Board of Education member?
Well, Emiliano's 8 months, so right now he just loves seeing my face. So he doesn't really. I don't think it's sunk in for him yet at 8 months. But Zakir, he's 5, and one of the reasons I ran for Board of Education in my town is the board, as it was before I ran, was 9 members, and I believe only 2 of them have a current public school student in our district. And when I look at a board of 9 people and almost none of them actually have children in the district, I see a big disconnect. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to have a child in the district, of course not, but it would be nice to at least have more of that perspective, especially during COVID when so many decisions are being made and so many things are happening in the school. So even though they're young, they were a big part of my reason for running, especially for this position. And when I went campaigning, I will say, as women, support is just so necessary. My mother is living with us, and because of COVID, we're quarantining together because she's older. I told her, I'm like, listen, I'm going to have to go door knocking until nightfall. I'm going to go do this on weekends. I'm going to do this on weekdays. I talked to my husband. I feel like this is true, that when you're running for office, it's not just you running, it's your family running, whether or not you want it to be. And so I learned that someone told me that a while ago, so I always kind of took that to heart. So when I decided to run for Board of Ed, my husband was always my sounding board, my partner. We sat down and talked about it. What would this look like? Is this the right decision even for my family? I can't do this unless I have support from my family and backing from my family. And my mother would watch Zakir and the baby while I went door knocking. So I would grab my things, grab my walking shoes and go door knocking. I would love to take my son with me door knocking, but he's 5 and he's a little wild. So I didn't want him Gangnam style dancing into someone's home, which is what he loves to do. He loves to dance, which is great, but it's not great to dance into people's homes during COVID. So unfortunately, he couldn't door knock with me. He has door knocked with me in the past, so maybe in the future he'll be able to again. But absolutely, when I walked off, he'd say, "Are you campaigning now? Are you going to campaign? Are you doing elections?" And he's a big reader, right? So as we're driving, you'd see my lawn signs everywhere. I had them all over town. People were so excited about my campaign. We had 100 signs. They went away in a week. People just grabbed them. They were so excited to put them on their lawns. And every time we drive to the store or go anywhere, he'd be like, Is that your lawn sign? Is that Nadia Hussain for Bloomingdale Board of Education? And so he would just love these signs, and he took my my door hangers and he put them on every door in the house. So you see my door hanger on every single door in the house. So he was campaigning for me to my own household. So to give him some credit, but I think it's so important, especially for our young boys and girls, to see leadership in their own homes and see their moms be those leaders. I can't emphasize enough how powerful of a statement that is. And it doesn't have to be something you hit them over the head with. It's something they see as normal, as part of their everyday life, that their mom, like Fozia, is now a councilwoman, that she's running a nonprofit, that myself starting an organization like the Bangladeshi American Women's Development Initiative, running for Board of Education when my child is so young. I think it does send a powerful message to them and to the community. And I will say a special shout out to my mother, because without her emotional labor, right, and her time of watching my children while I door knock, I would not be able to door knock if she wasn't doing that, if my husband wasn't taking that on. And so I always say I might have been the one who's on the Board of Education now, but it was on my mother's shoulders that was possible.
Absolutely. It definitely requires a support team. We don't do it alone as elected officials. You have to have people behind you that support you. And your number one supporters have to be your family. Mm-hmm. So as we head toward the end, I'm going to ask you if you could give a word of advice to people who want to get involved in their local communities, whether it's just on an activist side, a nonprofit side, sports, or whether they want to run for office. What is your word of advice for them?
Well, find what interests you and find organizations that support that interest. So if you're interested in working with the homeless or feeding the homeless, find an organization that does that. Or if you're interested in working with kids, find an organization that does that. I mean, I feel like especially now, there's always a need and there's always a place where you can fill in the gap and help community members. And I think it's really important to start grassroots, start by helping people in your local community, and then move on up if you're interested in politics. Then find out who the Democratic chairs are of your community, get the support of the Democratic chair so you can run for office. Because I think it's really important to have that backing when you're running. You can do it on your own, but when you have that backing, it makes things so much easier. I mean, I was lucky to have the backing of my Democratic committee in my town. I mean, they're the ones who we had 9 mailers that went out. We had a YouTube ad that would play all the time. All my kids' friends knew who I was because they would watch my YouTube ads. We had newspaper articles. So it really helps to have that support. But start locally, start grassroots, get down and find out where there's a need, where you can fill in the gap, and where you can help the community members in your town.
Awesome. Commissioner-elect?
Thank you. So I will say this, as in not just this point in my life where I'm just entering elected office, but even in the past when I would go door knocking or do organizing, I would hear from people over and over again, oh my gosh, I don't know how to run for office. I don't even know how to get involved. Nadia, how do you, and I do mentor a lot of young people. They're just like, how did you do this? How did you get to here? And I always say, listen, nobody was born an expert. Okay. You start by doing. You start by forgetting to start by doing. You start by having an interest, as Fozia said. You start by having some kind of vision or goal in mind. If you just think, I want to make a difference somehow, but I don't know what that looks like, that is the first step, right? And I always say, don't be afraid to not be an expert. All of us started somewhere, right? I did not start on the Board of Education. I did not start as a board member on the American Civil Liberties Union. I didn't just wake up one day when I was three years old and said, hey, I want to start a nonprofit, right? These were things that came as I did more and more of the things I was interested in and things I was passionate about. So let your passion guide you. And don't ever how do I say this? Don't let your inexperience or your or a newness to something stop you, because you were all there once and you have to start somewhere to build up that experience. Mm-hmm. Another thing that's also very important, there's a quote that says, you can't be what you can't see. And a lot of times that goes behind saying we would love to see more diverse representation of our beautiful country in those who are making the decisions for us. But I actually don't agree with that statement. I say you should be who you want to see. Because if I waited around to see, well, I need another Bangladeshi woman to be on the Board of Ed, or I need another person of color to run for office in my town, because in my town's 100-year history, there's never been a person of color to even run for office, let alone run and win. elected office in this town. And if I just waited saying, okay, I'm just going to hold back and see someone else do it, that isn't going to work for me. Because if I did that, it would be like, I don't know, forever until we saw that happen. So don't be afraid to be your own trailblazer. That sounds intimidating. That sounds scary. You don't have to even think of it that way. But if there's a change you want to see, sometimes you look around and realize, oh, it's me. I'm the one who has to do it. And you know what? That can be very powerful. And I don't want anybody who listens to this to stop themselves because they have to wait for someone else to do it first. You are powerful. You can do it.
Thank you very much to both of you for your participation, for your amazing answers, and for your inspiring quotes. I've asked you several questions. It's now your turn to ask me any question that you want.
So, Mayor, I actually want to ask you well, first of all, I want to thank you because I think you were my first supporters. I met you on a Zoom meeting that a friend had set up, and I connected with you afterwards, and you held a fundraiser for me. And without even meeting me, we just spoke on the phone, and you did so much for me. And I think that's what's the most important thing of being an elected official, a Muslim elected official, is to support those who come after you and give them a platform to grow. And that's what you did for me. So I can't thank you enough for that. And I want to ask you is how I can do that for others. What's the best way for me to pay it forward and help more Muslims be involved in politics and support them and guide them like you did for me? Because if it wasn't for you, I don't think your support really did mean a lot to me. And I will always, always be grateful for that. And thank you for that.
My pleasure. And thank you for...
When you're going to be running for higher office, because you are an amazing leader. You are such an amazing leader. We are so lucky. I think Nadia can agree. We are so lucky to have somebody like you in our community who uplifts people like us and guides people like us. So
thank you very much. And thank you for your kind words. I do it out of obligation, obviously, because, I came from Syria. I lived in the Middle East. I don't know how long any one of you lived in the Middle East, but you come from countries or backgrounds, or at least your families come from countries where there's a democracy. But I come from a country where it's absolute power, one family, half a century. So that's not something that I want to see in our community here. So the point is, all of us, we're going to meet our Creator. And during the time we are here on earth, we have to plant seeds. And that's how I was taught. So to me, it is not about me being in office. It's about continuing that chain of goodwill, chain of love, as they call it, and planting the seed for somebody else. We have to duplicate goodwill in order for us to have a better life for our children, grandchildren, and those who come after them. So you did yourself very well when I met you the first time. Obviously, you spoke very well. You were very focused, and that's why I decided I need to support you, because you're someone who will represent the community very well, but not only the Muslim community, but they'll represent their own community very well. But to answer your final question about running for higher office, I always say to our community, because when you go through the masjid, you get all that inshallah, and we're behind you. And I'm going to be quite honest. Sometimes you look behind you and there's nobody. They all say we're behind you. But I tell the community, it's when you are ready to elevate someone, and you really put your money and your word behind it, then it will be, inshallah. That's when you say inshallah, when you're actually going to do the effort to make things happen. As far as I'm concerned, if the conditions become right, then yeah, I might run for higher office. But I always say, even if I get out of politics, there's always something that I am going to do. And maybe I didn't start in nonprofit like both of you did, but maybe I'll end up in nonprofit. I did a lot of nonprofit work during my tenure as an elected official. I traveled to Bangladesh. I think Nadia knows that. I've traveled to Syria 7 times during the war to bring relief. So these are things that I do. Nonprofit and helping others is in my blood, is in my DNA. And it's something that, inshallah, I will do. If higher office comes up, I'll be more than honored to take it on. But we'll leave it to the will of Allah, and we'll see what happens.
Mayor, I have a question to you. You've done so much work, not just in elected office, but also human rights work for the community, work for international humanitarian support for the Syrian community. How do you, as you've become mayor, as you've done more and more work and come to leadership positions, how do you kind of stay true to yourself? How do you kind of keep that vision going and stay true to your vision when there can be sometimes so much distraction and demands from the outside that might not always fall in line with what you want to do?
That's another great question. So we're taught in our religion to hold ourselves accountable all the time to our guiding principles, and that is to help others. So, I always say I never go to sleep not being comfortable or not feeling content about what I did, because everything that I do is under the umbrella of the best interests of the larger community. So I always hold myself accountable to the principles that I was raised on. I remind myself that I am not going to last forever. That I look at, in politics, I look at everything that's been going on to people who decided to embezzle or do something they weren't supposed to do. So I constantly remind myself of the consequences of any bad actions. I have a family that I need to be with. So I think, these are very basic things. I just remind myself of my family, my guiding principles, and I hold myself accountable on a daily basis to what I have done. And if I hurt someone, I have to apologize. And otherwise, we have to forge forward with our mission in life, and that is to make the world a better place for our children, grandchildren, and obviously everybody else's children and grandchildren in turn as well. So that is it. Ladies, I want to thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we had Commissioner-elect to Bloomingdale Board of Education, Nadia Hussain, and Councilwoman-elect to Mount Laurel Township, Fozia Janjua. Thank you, ladies, very much for your time and for your wisdom. I'm sure people can reach you on social media if they need to connect with you. Also, if anybody has any questions, they could put it on the bottom in the comment section under the show, and myself or the ladies will respond to you. If this show inspired you in any way, shape, or form, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, that you hit the like button and hit the reminder bell so you could get notified of future Muslims in America episode. Until we meet again, be safe, be blessed, and be active.